Okay, so now looking at the notochord, what happens? The notochord stimulates the ectoderm via chemical signals to form the neural plate. The neural plate then flexes and folds over, forming the neural tube, which at the cranial end gives rise to the brain and lower down the spinal cord. One of the possible disruptions in neural tube formation is the notochord duplication, producing two neural tubes which can result in Siamese twins. Then what happens is that the mesoderm, it spills out of either end, which I'm going to explain in a second, and it pushes the primary yolk sac, which was formed from the hypoblast, remember, away from the trophoblast, which is the outer cell mass. And this produces the secondary yolk stalk. And you can see this here with the trophoblast on the outer side. You've got the embryoblast, the inner cell mass with the amniotic cavity. You've got the yolk sac formed from the hypoblast. And you've got the mesoderm spilling out of either side, pushing the yolk sac away from the trophoblast. Then what happens is the mesoderm develops into two layers. So one of the layers it forms around the embryonic disc, which I'll explain in a second, and the other layer it forms around the edge of the trophoblast. And this produces two cavities, the chorionic cavity and the extraembryonic coelom. There's also a connecting stalk, which is a strand of the mesoderm which has spilled out and formed two layers. And what the connecting stalk does is it connects the amniotic cavity to the cytotrophoblast. So the amniotic cavity, the inside, to the cytotrophoblast, which is the outer layer. And the connecting stalk will eventually become the umbilical cord. So to explain all these layers and cavities, at the inside you've got the amniotic cavity here, the yolk sac here, which is formed from the hypoblast, and the mesoderm spilled out of this side and this side, forming two layers. So one of the layers was here, so this is the inner layer around the embryonic disc, and the outer layer, which is around the edge of the trophoblast, which is shown here. The chorionic cavity separates the cytotrophoblast, which is the outside, from the outer layer of mesoderm, and the extraembryonic coelom, that separates the outer mesoderm from the inner mesoderm layer. The connecting stalk is a strand of mesoderm connecting the amniotic cavity to the cytotrophoblast, shown here.